Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Croccast podcast. I'm your host, Nate, along with my co-host, Matt.
Hey.
And today we're joined by Mr. Nathaniel Fränk. Nathaniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, we go over exactly what your job is and what you're working and research is in.
Sure. So we're a high volume venom production facility that's involved heavily in antivenoms for Africa, South America, and Asia.
Nice. And how did you first get interested in this, and how did you end up doing this kind of work?
Well, it's kind of funny. I started keeping reptiles at age 6, and so 32 years ago, and basically started out with turtles and tortoises, and then got super interested in snakes, actually through a family member who was keeping at the time wild caught ball pythons, and so I kind of worked with those for a long time and kept a lot of different venomous and non-venomous species. And in 2010, 2011, I was keeping the very rare Malaysian Blue Coral Snakes. And there was a researcher at University of Queensland, Dr. Brian Fry, that needed venom samples from those snakes to finish a study. And so I kind of taught myself how to extract venom and started supplying to him. And then it kind of grew from there. It was one of those, okay, you supplied this, what else can you supply? And so in 2011, I started M-Toxin's Venom Lab to be able to provide venoms to researchers all over the world. And that grew into antivenom contracts. So yeah, it was kind of a weird way to get started, but it got my foot in the door.
So, where did you first start out with reptiles? You're originally from Germany, correct?
No, actually, I'm American, only second generation.
Okay, my bad.
No worries.
I was just going off of what it's on your Facebook profile, but so what sort of venomous snakes were you keeping at the time you first got into your research?
I was keeping Malaysian blue corals, several species of crate, waggleri, so wagglers, temple vipers, stuff like that. And there was a real need at the time for those venoms to be studied.
So what?
Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was gonna say. So when you so at your labs, you currently extract the venom and stuff. What kind of processing do you do before you send it off to the different labs for use to making antivenom?
So that's a great question. We centrifuge our venoms because when a snake bites, even if it bites naturally, we don't express the venom glands or anything like that. You get different tissues in that venom. You get epithelial cells, things of that nature. So we spin those out, and then we do a process called lyophilization, where we freeze dry the venoms and get them shelf stable. So those venoms, once shelf stable, can last over 70 years and still have, their potency.
And then once it's I don't know how much you know about this process, but once that's then shipped off to the facilities, what do they do to then make it into antivenom?
Well, what they'll do is all the pharmaceutical companies have associated horse or sheep farms. And what they'll do is they'll take that venom, they test it, for purity. And then it is microdosed into a host animal. That host animal builds an immunity and on a regular basis gives a blood plasma draw, which is actually what antivenom is. I mean, in its most basic form, and the simplest way to explain it, it's freeze-dried horse plasma or sheep plasma, just pure IgG antibodies.
Now I've heard. So I worked with. I interned with the Kentucky Reptile Zoo, and they did a lot of with Jim Harrison. Jim Harrison, he does a lot of extractions over there. They were talking about. I don't remember all the details, but they were kind of talking about the differences between, like crowfab, like American, where you only use one side of the antibody as opposed to using both sides or something to that effect. But anyways, they were saying there's like a controversy between that, like different viewpoints, I guess, on that. Do you kind of want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. So it all has to do with the FAB molecule and what you want to use. The old antivenoms were a whole FAB molecule. And what would happen with that is you would get a lot of serum sickness from that, because you're basically, shoving a whole horse antibody into your system. What's changed in that is actually they clip the FC chain from the molecule and it creates an FAB2, which is a far safer antivenom that neutralizes in a much better way, is kind of the easiest way to put it.
Okay.
So it negated a lot of problems. It negated a lot of problems with serum sickness and things of that nature. Obviously, with the host animal, there are people that are allergic. And so there were problems with administering antivenoms and having anaphylaxis, things of that nature, when they would give the serum. So FAB2 is a much safer, more stable molecule for antivenom.
Yeah, that would make sense that doing that to the molecule would cause a lot less autoimmune responses, because it's nowhere near as foreign recognizes the body than an entire animal antibody would be.
Exactly correct.
So the Malaysian blue coral snakes, do they have a high venom yield, or are they have a pretty? Do you have to extract a good amount to actually get a good amount of venom to ship off?
No, because they're a long-glanded snake, you get a ridiculous venom yield out of them. I don't have exact numbers, but I mean, you're getting, I would say, if I had to guesstimate, probably 2 to 3 milliliters a bite.
And they're not really a large snake to begin with either, so it's not
correct.
Yeah. So Malaysian blue coral snakes, do they have a particularly toxic venom? Like, do they have a really low LD50 or anything like that?
Their LD50 isn't all that exceptional. What's unique about them is they have sodium channel activators. And so that venom has a huge potential for epilepsy treatment. And that was basically the original paper on that venom. That was the first real snake that, acted like a scorpion venom or a cone snail venom. It was very, very similar.
Well, and that's a big deal too, because if you're getting a high venom yield off of them, as opposed to like a cone snail where the harpoons are so small, you're probably not going to you're not getting a whole lot of venom from extracting from that. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it was a revolutionary study because in a lot of ways it showed that the Malaysian blue coral has a more effective venom than the inland taipan.
Wow.
So it's fascinating in that regard. But anyone that wants to review that paper, it was called the snake with the scorpion sting. And I want to say that was 2014 that came out. So there's a lot of really fascinating things in that venom that hadn't been found before.
How far along are they in the research phase of it? Like, how far off do you think it would be from like clinical trials with treating epilepsy?
I honestly don't know. One of the things that kind of plagues us venom extractors is, we'll sell to a lot of these different research firms and, we're basically not involved after they receive that product. So as far as how that's moving along, I'm not entirely sure. But there's a lot of interest internationally for that toxin right now.
That's pretty cool. Now, is there any, to your knowledge, is there any, like between, so you're saying the Malaysian corals, they have long venom glands. Is there any relationship between long venom glands and like prey that they prefer, or fang type or anything like that? Like, why would something have a larger venom gland than something else?
Well, it's interesting because it's believed that it's, the whole predator-prey, setup. Those guys primarily consume other snakes, so their venom is extremely neurotoxic to disable their prey as quickly as possible. Most of the Caliophis genus are long-glanded snakes, so they really just have a ridiculous venom yield to, similar to sea snakes. They can't let the fish get away. They've got to drop it as quick as possible. Same thing with the Malaysian blue coral.
Interesting.
So coral snakes over in Asia are kind of similar to the coral snakes we have here in the States, or are there any significant differences between them?
Well, the coral snakes we see in the United States, have a PLA1, PLA2 in the Micrurus fulvius, for example, the Florida coral, if you will. But that whole neurotransmitter portion is what's really unique in the blue corals. We don't see it in all the Caliophis. It's primarily in the Caliophis bivirgata itself.
Now, how often are you extracting from? Like, I imagine, you have more than. Do you have more than one? I'm assuming you have more than one Malaysian blue corals. I know you said they're rare, so I don't know.
Yeah, we have several, and it's typically a 24-day cycle with them. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, is that pretty standard in the industry, or does it kind of depend on what kind of snake you're extracting from?
It depends on the snake. I mean, there are certain snakes that are very susceptible to stress, and so extraction schedules are kind of set based on that. What we've learned, like an eastern diamondback, can't handle extraction, typically more than once a month. Excuse me. But, a lot of the Elapidae, can be done every 14 days, for example.
And so something that Jim talked about a lot is how far venom extraction has come along. Especially, like, Jim, because Jim's been doing it for such a long time and stuff, and how far it's come along, and how it's really improved over the years. Snakes are living longer with extract. He said at the very beginning, snakes that were being extracted from didn't live for very long. Do you want to kind of talk about how the industry's kind of changed over the years and how it's a lot more ethically conscious, I guess?
Well, I think that as we learn more, we learn more about these animals every day, and I think that personally, the reason we have longevity is having natural bites with no expression. I know Mr. Harrison expresses glands. We do not do that, but I think as things have progressed, letting animals naturally bite, give what they give, if anything, is a big factor in longevity on a venom line. And it used to absolutely be terrible. It was nothing to lose 20 to 40% of your animals just from the stress of extraction per annum, I should say.
Wow. So something else. So I was having a conversation with this person. I was kind of talking about venom extraction and stuff, and they asked me this, and I thought this was a pretty bizarre question for someone to ask. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for someone like you that works with them a lot to kind of express this. So I was talking to them, and they asked why, when people who are just keeping venomous snakes just as pets and stuff, why they don't remove the fangs, sew the venom glands together, whatever, make it impossible for it to inject venom. Why don't pet keepers do that?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that that's a tough one to answer, because you have the people that are ego-based, who just want to keep the animals based for their own ego. Mm-hmm. That's a tough one to answer, because you don't know what's going through people's minds. I mean, venomoiding a snake, I think, is one of the most cruel things you could do to an animal, specifically because venom isn't there to hurt humans. It's there for prey. And, there's so many digestive enzymes in those, snake venom, that you're basically robbing the animal of its ability to not only defend itself, but to, properly consume its prey.
Yeah, that's true too. I didn't even think about that, about the digestive factor that comes into injecting venom.
Well, I mean, speaking of Jim, one of the things that's interesting, that he said in the venom interviews is, you look at mamba bites, there's no tissue loss. Well, that's because everybody died before they lost the tissue. All of them have different enzymes in their venoms that are going to be able to do that. And it's, what hits you first.
Yeah. So I would assume then, if you took away the ability for the snake to inject venom, you wouldn't be able to feed it. You would have to feed it smaller prey, because it loses that digestive functions.
I mean, I think there's some correlation with that. I think there's probably a correlation to that.
Yeah, well, we were talking. So we had one guest on here that said that snakes with selenoglyphic fangs typically have longer fangs to eat larger prey, so that they can inject deeper into the prey, so that it helps digest from the inside out. as well as the outside in when it's in their stomach. So to prevent the meat from rotting within their stomach. So I was thinking, if you take away that venom, then you don't get that digestive function.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, just it's a barbaric procedure, you know. I honestly can't fathom it. Taking that right away from the animal.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a pretty bizarre question, especially from the person I was talking to. But yeah, I was just like, I didn't think someone would think that would be like okay to do,
Right.
But
right. We had a copperhead that stayed with us for about almost 8 years. That had been botched in its surgery, and the animal had difficulty, consuming its prey and digesting its prey, and it was a very sad situation to us, because if you're going to work with a hot snake, let it be a hot snake. It's like people that work with, raptors, let's say, taking away their talents, taking away their ability to defend themselves.
Yeah. So we've actually talked about this with a few other people on here before, but what are your thoughts on keeping hognose? And as far as as far as them being venomous and stuff, what are your thoughts on that and keeping them responsibly?
I mean, it's interesting because, one of my mentors in the industry, has always said that, snake bite, you're a living science experiment. And, hognose have an interesting venom, and it can cause problems if, they're allowed to chew and truly envenomate you. I don't think that they necessarily need to be regulated, but I think there's a lot of people that have a laissez-faire attitude towards those, as well as Belega. And I just don't understand it. I mean, those snakes adapted, from an evolutionary aspect to be able to disable their prey with their venom. How can we not respect that? There's been some, one of my favorite books is Venomous Bites from Non-Venomous Snakes, which is done by Dr. Dan Keeler. And those venoms will affect people's bodies in different ways, and, can affect the lymphatic system. It can affect a ton of different things. So they should be treated with respect.
Yeah. Would you say you should at least, so when you're taking care of hot snakes, you should always have like anti-venom on hand and stuff. Would you say with hognose you should at least have like an EpiPen on hand?
I think an EpiPen is wise, just because you don't know what it's going to do to you, and how severe the bite is going to be. I think having epinephrine available is a good practice, but we see how many people are bitten by hognose and never have a reaction, but it's that one person that's bitten that does have a reaction, and then it's a serious, medical situation.
For sure.
So you mentioned you have Malaysian Blue Coral Snakes, and you also mentioned you have like wagglers, pit vipers, and several other stuff. But currently, what are the main species you work with your venom extraction?
It's primarily African species. We deal with a lot of Naya. For Asia, we do a lot with Naya, for example, Deboia russellii, things of that nature. And then for South America, we're dealing with a ton of Bothrobs. So as Al Koritz, my dear friend, puts it, pogo sticks with venom.
Apt description. But...
Yeah.
So what are is all of your stuff that you're extracting from, is that all going into anti-venom production, or is there some of it going into medical research like your Malaysian blue corals?
So a lot of our scorpion and tarantula venoms are going to drug discovery right now. I would say, 95% of our business is anti-venom, and the remainder, for pharmaceutical research.
Out of curiosity, how do you milk the scorpion?
So it's actually not that complicated of a process. You basically grab the scorpion with forceps at the base of the tail, and use a light electrostimulation on the tail towards the gland itself, which basically vibrates it. And that enables you to get, 1 or 2 drops a piece. I mean, to make a gram of scorpion venom, you're typically doing 15,000 extractions to be able to get a gram. Whereas, an Eastern Diamondback will give a gram in a bite, if it feels like it.
Right.
So it's a very, very tedious process.
So with the medical research being done into that, I'm guessing a lot of it is looking into, what the, how it can help, and then synthesizing that, because I imagine it's not practical to constantly be extracting 15,000 scorpions for a gram.
Well, yeah. And, there is some of that going on. But a lot of the pharmaceutical companies still want, what we would call raw venom, but purified and lyophilized venom for a lot of those projects. So to synthesize it is the wise way to go. But that old adage of scorpion venom being the most expensive liquid in the world, it's just ridiculous to us. Because it just isn't.
Do you know what they're the different kind of medical stuff that they're researching with scorpion venom? I've heard that they've looked into like brain cancer and like painkillers for that kind of stuff.
It's primarily cancer research, and the unfortunate thing is we're held by non-disclosures to not discuss it, which I know isn't fun for you guys, but it's a lot of cancer research, that I can say.
That's cool. Yeah, well, that's good. That seems to be a lot of medical venom research is cancer and like either blood thinners or coagulants or anything like that.
Exactly.
So with your naiads, what are some of your do you have like any Cape Cobras do you work with, or what type of naiads do you work with predominantly?
Oh, we work with a ton of Naianivia, a ton. But Anolifera, the forest cobra complex, and we do a lot with monocles because we're doing a drug through one of our customers as a monovalent antivenom for Kyuthia. So it's a lot of red spitters, a lot of Nyanubiae, Mozambica, pretty much every Naya there is. It feels like some days.
Yeah, those forest cobra complexes basically becoming the African version of rat snake phylogeny.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And some studies are in the works to see from an evolutionary standpoint how those venoms differ, but it's still in the early stages of research. Most of our antivenom clients view a forest cobra as a forest cobra. So until some of those papers come out, we won't know what the differences are.
Mm. So why, and maybe this might be outside of your expertise, but do you know why, like, for instance, the timber rattles, and I might have this backwards, but the timber rattlesnakes in like Kentucky are neurotoxic, and the canebrakes in Georgia are hemotoxic. And then I've read about Mojave, it's backwards, it's the other way.
Yeah.
And then I think it was the Mojave rattlesnakes in Arizona. There's and this might be backwards too, but there's a population that's like neurotoxic, and everything around it though is hemotoxic. Like, why? How does populations get switch venom like that?
I think it's all prey driven. That's my personal belief. But I don't pretend to be a venom evolutionary scientist.
Right.
So I can't answer it, in a well-educated manner.
No, that makes sense. I guess if that's the case, I guess venom would have to be pretty plastic as far as if different prey is switching, if that makes sense, like switching it from neurotoxic to hemotoxic or vice versa based on prey, I guess it'd have to be pretty plastic unless this is over the course of a long period of time.
Yeah, I would say it's over a very long period of time, for sure.
Makes sense.
So is there any particular species that you enjoy working with more than others?
I absolutely love the Ophiophagus snakes. So I am very passionate about crates and corals. But I love Dendroaspis, and they've always, in my opinion, been fascinating to work with, all four species.
Yeah, so with mambas, is there anything unique about harvesting venom from them? Are they like high yielders, or like difficult to milk or anything like that?
Well, I think, with mambas, they have a different physiological standpoint of how they actually inject their venom. But to me, I don't like to say intelligence, but it's the intelligence of them. They're very aware of their surroundings. They know when it's time to be extracted from and when it's time to just be fed prey. So to me, those more attentive snakes that seem smarter possess, a different skill set. You have to change up your methods on a regular basis because they will learn basically what your moves are, if you will, if that makes sense.
That's actually really cool. Like, it's I understand it makes it harder, but that's actually really cool. Just, I don't know, that's just cool to me that they can kind of anticipate what you're going to do based on routine and stuff.
Exactly.
especially from snakes, which a lot of people, even herpetologists, kind of see snakes as one of the the lesser intelligent reptiles, but compared to like a lizard or a crocodile or crocodilians.
Exactly.
The mambas. So does just in general, the snakes that you or I guess the more aware ones, like the mambas that are a little bit more aware, do you see any kind of when that they're understanding that it's extraction time? Do you see any kind of weariness towards that, like them wanting to get away or anything, or is it they kind of more like laissez-faire? Or how would you say like they react?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, what I've seen, and there's nothing to back this up, it's just from experience. A lot of our, like, for example, our black mambas, they know if we approach them with a certain tool, that it's time to give venom, versus just providing them prey and water and their basic needs. I have mambas that, and that it pains me to say this, but I have mambas that could basically be free handled. But the minute they're on that extraction table, it is, all bets are off, and they're ready to go into attack mode. We call it Mamba party time at M Toxin. That's when they're ready to go.
And that makes sense because even though they're aware that they're being venom extracted, it's still kind of like predatory evasive. Like you're still like grabbing them behind the head. It's still as if they're being eaten. Like I don't know how to word that, but right. So it makes sense that they're going to be more ready to party.
Exactly.
That's interesting. That's super interesting. What of the mambas, which one do you think is more intelligent, the blacks or?
Well, I mean, in my experience, I would say the blacks. Dendroaspis angusticeps is a very placid mamba, and they're very easy to work with. It's almost like they're accepting of what's happening. Whereas the black mambas, they know that they're the king of it, and they like to put up a fight.
So when it comes to your scorpions and your tarantulas and stuff, did you start extracting from them because you got contracts, people wanting to venom from them, or is that something that you were interested in extracting from and started from there?
No, it's something I've always been interested in extracting from. And we have a demand from our customer base for those venoms. So it's really kind of a culmination of things that led to that.
Now, I saw a video of people extracting venom from Sydney funnel web spiders where they kind of have the capillary tube and get them to kind of have like an aggressive response where they then put the capillary tubes in it, collects the venom from the fangs. Is it pretty similar for tarantulas, or is it done a little differently?
We use a similar process to our scorpions. So we'll bring the tarantula to the vial and then electrostimulate the glands to release the venom. So it's the scorpion and tarantula processes are pretty much identical.
And that electro stimulation, that doesn't increase the stress levels on them? I mean, obviously, we're being extracted from, so it's going to increase stress levels regardless, but...
We don't see it. I mean, some of the tarantulas we have are, still the first tarantulas I started with. It just depends. It's individual in how they react. We have some tarantulas of a certain genera and species that are incredibly defensive, but then we have those outliers that don't want to give a single drop, during the process. So it's unique by animal.
Do you have any kind of like breeding projects set up, or do you like to continually have animals extracting from, or how do you go about through that?
So there's a lot in extracting for antivenom where there's certain genera and species that we need to have locality data on, because like as a for instance, there's certain puff adders that are more toxic than others. So we focus on bringing in specimens from those regions. But otherwise, where we don't see venom variation, we work with places like the Reptile Preservation Institute, Cody Bartolini, and those cats over there. They produce, for example, most of our mambas, that we work with, as well as our terciopellos, things of that nature.
Okay, so going a bit back to the tarantulas, speaking of arthropods, have you ever done any, or do you plan on ever doing any venom collection with, say, something like giant centipedes?
We do it. Yeah, we do it now. Terrible little animals they are, but we do it. We do it now, and there's a lot of interest in pain medication from those, and some of them that we work with, have claimed lives.
Wow.
So it's still an animal to fully respect. And just like our tarantulas, we anesthetize them to be able to extract their venom, just because it's safer for the handler and it's safer for the animal. That's one of our biggest things is, we don't want to injure a tarantula or a centipede extracting its venom.
I'm assuming centipedes are pretty much the same way as scorpions and tarantulas in extracting them.
That's correct. Yeah, it's still an electrostimulation to the mandibles, if you will. And, you get some of those centipedes, you get an incredible venom yield from. And it's intimidating.
The ones that have claimed lives, is that from allergic reactions, or is that just their venom is that potent?
Their venom is that potent. And it's typically, the young who are affected by it, and the elderly. As you can imagine, the immune system isn't as robust as it needs to be to get through a bite.
Do you wear do you guys wear gloves at all when extracting? I know, like, for instance, Jim's personal philosophy on that was he didn't want to wear gloves because at some point they're going to fail. And it's not always 100%, and he doesn't want to become reliant on something that might not do the job.
I think that for us, it's all about tactile, response. We need to be able to feel the animal, make sure we're not exerting too much pressure on it, those types of things. And so I won't wear any when I'm extracting at all, especially not with, the scorpions, tarantulas, and centipedes, because they're such fragile animals. It would be terrible to lose one, just losing that tactile response.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jim's right. I mean, a glove is never 100%. To trust your life to a glove is, pretty ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. There is, when I was interning over there, it was funny because there was a call because some guy over in Ohio, probably someone Nate knows, just kidding. But he was, for whatever reason, messing with his cobras. I think it was a king cobra. It was a king cobra at 12 in the morning, 12 a.m. and he didn't have any boots or anything on, and something happened. And of course, he got hit on the toe and stuff, and he didn't have any anti-venom on him either. So there's like a whole thing with that. But yeah, I can imagine, like, for one, like, it's one, the gloves is one thing, but to not have any shoes on while you're messing around with snakes, especially when they're like crawling around, like its cage was on the bottom too. So it's just, I don't know, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to, play Russian roulette with their lives. And I'll never understand it. I'll never understand it.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
What's even weirder is that I'm pretty sure under Ohio law, if he had a king cobra or something like that, he would have to have anti-venom at his place legally.
Yeah, I don't know Ohio laws. I just remember it was a big thing because they were like trying to contact Jim to get his, because he was like the next closest guy, and there's like a whole, like, it was a whole thing, but it was like several hours before he got any kind of anti-venom treatment. It was pretty rough. But then he posted online afterwards, like on Twitter or some social media thing about it, like joking about it. It's like, what? Some people are crazy.
Snakebite, having gone through it 3 times, is no laughing matter. I mean, it is one of the most terrifying, situations you can go through. And it doesn't matter if you're prepared or not. It's horrific. When I went through my black mamba bite, we knew that we had the anti-venom there, and, everything would be okay from that standpoint. But, if I had underlying kidney issues or liver issues or any of those other things, that bite could have gone very wrong very quickly.
It's funny too, because a lot of, I don't know if you're the same way with this, but a lot of herpetologists I've met like walking around barefoot. I do this. I'm the same way.
I don't get it.
I like walking around barefoot a lot, even in the woods and stuff. But yeah, but I know, like, Jim was the same way. He likes walking around barefoot, and even Chris even mentioned how he likes walking around barefoot a lot too. Chris Carmichael. So, it's funny. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I don't understand it personally, but a lot of my South Florida friends are perfectly comfortable barefoot, working around these animals.
I mean, I'll do it. I'll walk in the woods barefoot. But I would, and maybe sounds just backwards, but like if I was in a lab, like working with venomous reptiles, I wouldn't go barefoot. Or if I was in a serpentarium or something. But I don't mind being in the woods barefoot. But yeah, in a serpentarium, that's a whole nother story. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me personally, even when I go out in the woods, I prefer to have shoes on my feet because where I live at, there's a lot of briar bushes and stuff like that. So going barefoot is pretty much death sentence. So.
Well, just go barefoot and let a pygmy tap your toe and see how that goes.
Yeah, not a good time.
I've always wanted to find a wild pygmy, but I've seen dead ones on the road, but I've never actually found a live wild one, that's something on my list I want to find.
I am the worst field herper on the planet, and I've gotten to see several, as well as Easterns. But yeah, I had full-toed shoes on the entire time. My guides did not.
Your guides didn't?
No, not at all.
Where was this at?
Down in South Florida.
I was actually just this afternoon walking around the woods barefoot. I had to pull a bunch of thorns from my feet, but yeah, I didn't see any snakes. I did see Everglades rat snake the other day though, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
That's funny. What was I gonna say? Do you do a lot of field herping at all, or are you're always in the lab?
I'm always in the lab, so it's and I'm not a good field herper. Never have been. I go out twice a year to see the timber rattlesnakes in our state emerge from their dens, and then in fall come back to their dens. And that's about the extent of what I'll do with it. It's a wonderful experience to get to see those animals. But when you work with snakes professionally, you hit a point where, enough is enough, to take care of and everything like that. So, yeah, but those are very special moments to me, getting to see them come out and getting to see them head back to their dens.
I have a friend like that. I hate going fishing with him because every single time we go fishing, we never catch anything. I can catch stuff constantly, but once we go fishing with him, I can't catch anything.
I feel your pain.
So
I guess that's next time your friends.
So I guess that means we won't ever go herping together if you're really bad at herping. I learned a lesson from my friend with fishing. Don't go with people that can't find anything.
Yeah, exactly. I've gone out with my favorite snakes are Eastern corals, and I've gone out I don't know how many times and found Eastern diamondbacks, indigos, pygmies, everything, but never the one genus and species I want to see. I've never been fortunate enough to see one in the wild.
Yeah, that's always the case. You find all the cool stuff when you're looking for the other thing, more or less.
And then
absolutely.
And then when you're just out looking for cool stuff, then you actually find the thing that you. Then you find the not as cool things.
No. It's your unlucky friend who randomly stumbles across it.
Yeah. I've been trying to catch red-headed agamas down here, but they're always in a spot to where they always have the high ground. So you can't get anywhere near them. Even if you want to like noose it or something, you can't get anywhere near it because they can see you way before you can even see them. They're so annoying to catch because there's like plenty of them. They're always in just a bad place to catch them. It's really annoying. Or it's really windy out, so it's like your fishing line is blowing all over the place if you're trying to noose it and stuff. So. Anyways, do you have any more questions, Nate?
No.
All righty. Well, it seems like a pretty good spot to end here, unless you wanted to add anything else.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
My pleasure. All right. See y'all later.